Hi guys, it's LR here from l.r.media on Instagram, and today I just want to do a bit of a review on the Canon R7. This is the box. I don't know why I'm holding up the box. There it is. There's the R7. I've got the Sigma 35mm 1.4 art on there at the moment, filming on the EOS R, and I just want to do a 10-minute review of the camera. I've had the camera now for about 3 months and have had a chance to use it both in my portrait shooting and also just around the house shooting things, using it a little bit for video, which is sort of newer for me. And I just want to give a bit of an overall review from a user's point of view about this camera. Okay, so first off, build quality. I'd say that this isn't professional build quality, but it is just below. Okay, you're going to get obviously better build quality on something like an R6, R6 Mark II, R5, and of course, then you're going to go into another league with something like the R3, which is going to be an extremely ruggedly built camera. But this is well built. It feels a little bit prosumerish, okay, but everything is solid. All the buttons and switches are all good, and it has a little bit of that plasticky feel, but to be honest, you're getting a lighter camera, a smaller camera, and it's something that I've really come to enjoy since both moving to mirrorless with the Canon EOS R, and now this body being even slightly smaller. I think I'm liking it. You know, I've resisted sort of moving to smaller cameras. I've always preferred DSLRs like a 5D Mark III or 4 that look professional and stuff, but these new mirrorless cameras are so packed with features, and having something that's lighter weight and smaller is also an advantage in my. Okay, so talking about image quality now, I've been really blown away, to be honest, with the sensor in the R7. It's 32.5 megapixels, and it's an APS-C crop sensor, obviously. And I wasn't sure how that would work because the only other crop sensor bodies I've had have been, I think, around the 18 megapixel mark. So I was unsure about how that would play out, but I've been really impressed with the files. An absolute ton of detail. This is a great camera if you're needing a lot of detail in your photos. And I'll put some shots up, and I've just been shooting everything: portraits, my cat, flowers out in the front garden, and just every time I've just been really impressed with the detail and the quality of the colors. The sensor seems to have very punchy, vibrant colors that come out of it. Definitely a different look to something like the EOS R that I also have. But having said that, I really like it. Having spent time with the files, I'm getting really great results. Now, in terms of ISO and dynamic range, I've personally have had no issues. My preferred ISO to shoot at is obviously ISO 100, doing a lot of portraiture and controlled sort of shoots. I'm either shooting with flash and lighting, or I'm usually shooting in times of day when I can shoot at 100 ISO. And really going up to 400 ISO is pushing it for me. So I'm in a different sort of position than, I guess, someone that might be shooting birds or wildlife or weddings where they're really pushing the ISO. Having said that, I have tested it, and I will say that I find it, acceptable. I'm not a lover of shooting high ISOs, but I've shot up to 3200 with the EOS R, and haven't really had too many issues. The only thing I'll mention is that it is pretty critical that you nail exposure. So shooting at 3200 with a correct exposure, the noise is going to be pretty manageable. Shooting at 3200 and being a stop underexposed and then trying to lift that image, you're going to get a lot of noise, okay, on these high megapixel cameras. So that's just something to keep note of. And you really want to make sure that if you're pushing that ISO up, I mean, you want to make sure you're nailing your exposure anyway, but if you're pushing that ISO up, the higher it goes, the more critical it's going to be that you are really nailing that exposure and paying attention to it. Okay, but no complaints in terms of ISO or dynamic range. I haven't ever had a situation where I thought, oh, the dynamic range is lacking. Obviously, you're going to get slightly less in a crop sensor body, but the sensors are so good now. Once you're over about 10 stops of dynamic range, it's hard to notice in the real world actually shooting. So no complaints there. Now, just in terms of usability, how have I found it? I found it excellent. I love the layout. I know people complain about the layout. Let me tell you, compared to the EOS R, this thing is amazing. So it's so nice to have buttons and dials again. I haven't had that since I had my 5D Mark III, and I just realized when I got this camera how much I missed that. I love having the mode dial on the top. I missed having that. I really like the switch where you can go from just having it on to going over to the movie function. It makes switching between photos and videos so much easier, and I really like it. I haven't had any issues with accidentally switching it into movie mode or anything like that. The switch is fine, and it's not like it's too easy to switch it over. I mean, it feels they're very definite clicks there. Okay, so no complaints there. And I find that there's plenty of buttons and dials that I can assign all the buttons to different functions, which is also something that was missing in the EOS R. It has taken me a while to get to terms with how I want this camera set up, which happens with any sort of new camera, but with the introduction of dual pixel autofocus 2, there's been a major update to the focusing systems on these cameras. So I initially set it up with dual back button focus, and that might be something that you want to do if you are shooting a lot of wildlife or sports or action sort of shots. For me, I'm doing more general purpose things. So the way I have it set up now is that I actually have autofocus tracking disabled in the camera menu, and then I've assigned the autofocus on button to engage subject tracking. Now, the reason why I've done that is that if you don't do it that way, even if you have a single point selected, it's gonna try to track around, and the autofocus system in the R7 is quite aggressive, and so it'll try to lock onto something even if nothing's moving. And so I've found the best results for me have been to have the star button select through 3 different autofocus zones. So I've got like a point, I've got the small point, I've got like a rectangular box that sort of fits over a person's body, and then I have just the whole sensor area, and I can cycle through those 3 quite easily by pressing the star button. Now, if I'm shooting a person, I'll usually go to the box. I'll put it over the person's torso or the general area. Engage subject tracking. Obviously, I have eye focus turned on, and it'll just find the eye and track it. And I find that's the easiest way to do it. I did have it set up where I had dual back button focus, but I just found it more cumbersome for what I was doing. I can see why that would be a preferred method for someone that's shooting wildlife or sports. But for general purpose stuff, I just have that where I have those 3 different areas selected that I can cycle through quite quickly. I find having more than 3, it just slows you down. And then I have the subject tracking on the autofocus on button. I found that has been working very good for me, and that's what I'm sort of happy with now. For me, myself, I'm just sticking to electronic first curtain shutter. The reason for that is I find that I get too much shutter shock with mechanical shutter, and it is quite loud. The other option is, of course, fully electronic, but you do run the risk of rolling shutter with that. And for the things I shoot, I'm not shooting high shutter speeds or anything like that, so I just stick with electronic first curtain shutter. Okay, now I just want to really quickly touch on video, and I think that this is where this camera shines the most. It's really great, and it's sort of turned me on to shooting video. And I've always been frustrated with Canon cameras in the past doing video. There's always seemed to be so many restrictions, and with the EOS R7 it's so easy. It's got IBIS. The IBIS is great. I can use non-stabilized lenses, no problem. I've had no problem using the Sigma 18-35, Sigma 35, 1.4, the 50, even the Canon 85mm 1.8 EF is great. Even at 85mm on an APS-C body, the stabilization works fantastic. The other feature that I don't see people talking about is actually also the option where it can auto level. Now, I don't use that in photos, but I do use that in video pretty much all the time. It makes things so easy. So you don't really, unless you're really tilting the camera, you don't have to worry about it being level. So I just leave it turned on, and I found that to be great. Between that and the IBIS, you get some extremely stable, great shots, and it makes it easy, you know. And I'm not a cinematographer, I'm just an amateur, especially when it comes to video. It's something that I want to go into a lot more, but yeah, it's great. Again, I'm really loving this camera. I think coming into Christmas now too, you're going to see some deals on this camera, and if you've been thinking about getting a camera at the moment, I think the EOS R7, I really got to be honest, and I'm not, you know, I mean, I bought the camera, no one's given me the camera, but this is the camera that I've been the most excited about for a long time. When I got the EOS R, I was very excited about it just because of the eye tracking and what a game changer that was for me. I think that this camera is even more exciting. The autofocus system, once you get a hold of it, is brilliant and game-changing. If I had to give it a rating out of 10, I've got to be honest, it's going to be an 8. It's very high. I'm actually, I continue to be more and more impressed with the camera as I use it, which is great, because sometimes when you get a camera, you sort of have all these expectations, and then you sort of, you know, especially with Canon cameras, you have things that you find that you can't do, or you have to have workarounds. But with this camera, I found it to be the opposite. Continued to be excited about it every time I pick it up. It's just a great camera, and it works. Okay, guys, so I hope that's helped you make a decision if you're thinking about buying the R7 or a different camera. I love the fact that this is such a professional camera. The other thing I didn't mention is the dual card slots. I love that. I love having that. I've missed that since I sold my 5D Mark III, and it's just nice to have that peace of mind. Okay, guys, so I hope that helped. If it did, please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I'm going to try to turn out more content frequently every week, and hit that like button if it's helped you or given you some information. Okay, thanks, guys. See you next time. Bye.